what I'm just going to run quickly the clip which I think lots of people have seen, and then we'll have a conversation. 1 second, let's go.
Security.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup. Meanwhile, crops are failing. Millions of people are dying in monsoons, wildfires and severe drought. We cannot afford new oil and gas. It is going to take everything we know and love.
So that's obviously the action by Just Stop Oil, which of course Emma here is a member of. Now, this caused a lot of controversy, including amongst, I suppose, people who've been naturally sympathetic. I should note the painting wasn't damaged. The painting was protected by glass. So basically, the net impact was some paint on some glass. In terms of the lasting consequence, if people are disturbed at the destruction of a painting, no painting was destroyed in the making of this protest, I suppose you could say. But I think they've both been arrested for criminal damage or something. I don't know what the criminal damage is. It to the floor or something because of the paint? I don't know what it was. So Emma, I just want to ask. So firstly, a lot of people go, well, just tell me firstly, what's Just Stop Oil's big aim? What are you fighting for?
Yeah, so we have one really simple demand, which is that the UK government halts all new licenses and consents for fossil fuels in the UK. That's something that the International Energy Agency, the UN, it's what their own climate change committee recommended. They've even been taken to the High Court and found guilty of not meeting their net zero commitments. Like, it's completely incompatible with climate action. And obviously, when we started this campaign, actually, it was 40 new oil and gas projects that were proposed. Now, this autumn, it's 100 new oil and gas projects. So as soon as we get a meaningful statement from the government, this disruption will stop. But they're not listening to rationality, to common sense, to their own advisors, and no one is holding them to account. So that's why we've got young people taking this kind of action.
So we've got one comment here, for example, which is supportive from Sir on STR. Those who are more upset about a potential damage of a painting than the actual damage to our planet were exposed without actually damaging the painting. It's very well done. Yeah, so I suppose a lot of people I saw on social media were like, well, I'm never going to support their cause again. It's like, what do you mean by that? You're not going to support a transition to a renewable, an economy based on renewable energy? I mean, sort of like, what? I'm going to support the destruction of the planet now because I'm angry about a protest. It just seems a bit like cutting your nose off to spite your face. That, but a lot of people who are sympathetic say, well, actually, this won't win public support. A lot of people who are naturally sympathetic to what you're arguing for will be alienated, and therefore will undermine the cause. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't think that's true. I think this has sparked millions upon millions of conversations worldwide. And I think if even a tenth of those conversations mention the new licenses for oil and gas, that's worth it. Because the fact of the matter is that if we didn't do this, it wasn't like this news story would have been naturally replaced by the one that suggests that our crops next year might completely fail due to climate change. This is not, I think it's kind of indicative, really, to be honest, of the problem that we have in society. If, I think we need to reach that point where it's as shocking that our government are proposing more fossil fuels when we can literally see the effects right now in this country. We've seen 40-degree heat. I think we need to reach a point where that is as shocking as a bit of soup on some glass. That is what we need to be feeling, because we have been blockading oil terminals. We have been, blockading Downing Street. And unfortunately, the attention economy is what it is. And I think there's also an effect called the radical flank effect, which means that, you know, we don't need to be popular. Like, we don't need to be popular. We need to grab attention, and we need to put pressure on the government, and we're doing that.
I suppose the model there would be, say, Extinction Rebellion in 2019, which the poll said was very unpopular. But equally, what the same poll said in 2019 is that public worry about the environment as a political issue went up and up and up in 2019. So Extinction Rebellion wasn't popular, but because they forced a discussion about the environment because of their direct action, that meant people were more likely to think the environment was an issue the government should do more about.
Exactly. And we have so many people saying we support the cause, but not the means. So, and that is, people are saying, you know, of course we shouldn't have any more drilling in the North Sea, but that wasn't the conversation a few months ago. You know, there was all this complete nonsense, to be honest, about energy security, because, you know, what's more energy security than homegrown energy in the form of like wind and solar and renewables. And obviously oil and gas takes upwards of 5, 10, 15, 20 years to come online. So, you know, these kind of arguments are being proven to be bogus. And we are getting people agreeing with the cause. But I would also say to people, like, if you're really angry about this, then by all means protest in other ways. But I've been at Downing Street several days, and I've seen other groups standing by the side of the road with placards, and we just get ignored.
Can I ask just quickly, why? I mean, I get the cup of soup, because the idea was people can't afford to heat even a cup of soup. This is a crisis affecting millions of people. Why a painting?
Well, we did protests earlier in the year, also targeting artworks. Artworks have a huge amount of cultural value and significance. So it's really trying to tie the kind of outrage and anxiety we feel when something precious is being is seen to be under threat, and really trying to link that to people of like, why are we not upset about the fact that we're not going to have any sunflowers at this rate? We're not going to have any plants. We're not going to have any crops. We're not going to have any water. Like, we need to try and tie that in, that outrage. And obviously artworks have been targeted in the past by many, many protest organizations from the suffragettes onwards, you know, because they are these points of like of value. And that's what we're trying to tie into. And we can see that it works. It grabs people's attention. They're shocked and they're outraged. But I mean, I studied sculpture and environmental like myself, and I know that most artists are in favor of like social change and social good. And, you know, most artists have been quite radical figures in their time as well. So I think sometimes some of this outrage is misplaced, because I know that Van Gogh, for example, would be, I think, devastated and outraged by what is happening to the nature and to the world that he loved.
Michael Fastini says, and by the way, it's worth noting the suffragettes were very unpopular in the time and did far more extreme forms of direct action than just stop oil. I mean, they people died. Actually, there was also some suffragette actions I should notice. They used bombs, some of them, and they did. It's only went for art galleries, but also did far more extreme forms of vandalism. Most people actually look back at this. People don't go, "Oh, I hate the suffragettes" these days. That's for sure. That's true. Not that I'm encouraging, obviously, people to start using bombs, just to be very clear there, before I get arrested under the government's anti-terror legislation. Michael Fastini, I didn't care about the painting protests. I don't think it's effective, but it's not a big deal. The dumping milk on a store floor was not helpful. So can you explain about what is he referring to there? This is, I think, Fulton and Mason. Am I wrong? So milk being put, what happened there, and why, what's the defense, if you like?
So that was another group from us. They're called Animal Rebellion, and they're asking for a fair transition to a plant-based sort of food system. Obviously, because animal agriculture is also another leading driver of climate change. And again, it's that disruptive action. You can convince people all you want, but that kind of visceral seeing it, you know, it gets the message out there. It gets the attention. It also just starts to tap into this cognitive dissonance that we have as a society, where we're like, oh yeah, you know, I totally agree. We probably should be transitioning to a plant-based economy, or a plant-based food system, but we're still all carrying on our lives as usual. And that kind of, any kind of disruption, like change is not going to come from us just all sitting there and wishing it to happen. Change is going to come through those kind of visceral, kind of non-violent, those completely peaceful confrontations that we have. you know? And so, I mean, I support that kind of action as well, because I think, again, who is it damaging? It's literally crying over some spilt milk, but it's really getting that message out there. It's getting that point out there. And it's showing that also that we're not going to be obedient to a system that is literally killing us. The system that we have at the moment is literally killing us. Like, it actually makes me quite emotional sometimes. I was talking to one of my friends who's involved in Just Stop Oil as well, and she's 20 years old. And she told me, she was like, Emma, you know when the world is going to run out of like drinking water? 2040. You can literally just look that up on Google, just type into Google, when is the world going to run out of water? 2040. She said to me, Emma, I'm not even going to be 40 years old. That is the situation that our young people are in right now. And to think that they should just sit back and just accept the world going on as usual, I think is just obscene. And I think really we should be supporting these young people in their protest, in their action, because the world is not going to change unless we make it change. And that is why we're doing this action. In the context of that, a bit of soup on some glass, a bit of milk on the floor is just nothing. It's nothing. It offends our sensibilities, but our sensibilities need to be offended because we really let them down.
Just finally, the government are talking now about doing basically a crackdown on these forms of protest. So were you worried about that in terms of, because obviously we already have the policing bill in this country, which essentially clamps down on protests, which is both peaceful and actually doesn't engage in property damage, for example. Not that this really does constitute property damage, by the way, because as I keep saying, no painting was damaged in the making of this protest. Yeah, I mean, what do you know, is the issue there that actually, you know, the danger, some might say, is, well, this will basically provide a rationale for the government to clamp down on all forms of protests, and obviously that will make us even less of a democracy than you already are. What would you say to that kind of thing?
Well, I think that we are putting the government in a difficult position because we are causing these disruptive protests. And the thing that all of the supporters have is that we're not afraid. We're not afraid of what they do to us. You know, there are people in the movement, over 50 people that have been put in prison. Louis and Josh and others are still in prison awaiting trial. We're not afraid of that clampdown. And I think it kind of shows that we're putting pressure on them. And what I find really confusing is that obviously they could stop this disruption immediately by just doing the obvious thing and halting oil and gas, but they're showing that they would rather put peaceful protesters in prison than do the morally right thing. So they can do what they wish to us. I mean, they're also clamping down on union activity. They'll clamp down on anything that they see as being effective for change because they want to keep us in our place.
Emma, really appreciate you taking the time to come and explain the rationale behind the protests. And, you know, it's very important that your voice is heard because, as I've said, at the moment, what happens is you get, obviously, a mainstream media which will go, not give any kind of real opportunity to explain, you know, in a reasonable way what the basis for it is and what this is really about. And whatever people think about this particular tactic, it's the fact, you know, I think if we were in a generation to come, living in a planet which has suffered the calamity of the things you're protesting against, I think we'll look back at kind of who's more vindicated, the people who did something or anything to try and stop that calamity, or the people who denounced the specific tactics to try and stop that calamity from happening. I just think, you know, how will we look back at things? It's the Don't Look Up phenomenon, I suppose, the film which looked at a asteroid or comet heading towards the Earth and how those trying to stop the calamity were ridiculed and mocked. So I think it's very important that we do talk about this properly. And you very eloquently, whatever people think, there are people here. I mean, Falsam says, I don't think the problem is that we lack attention, it's that we lack power. While I respect the dedication, I don't see how these tactics build power. So some people might not agree with the tactics, and they might oppose it on other grounds as well. But I think everyone rational would agree what you're fighting against is the real horror, and we need to do far more to raise attention. So thank you for talking to us.
And I think with the question of power, I think a lot of us feel we don't have power, but that's part of this system of like individualism that we've been put into. Actually, collectively, we have a lot of power. You'd be amazingly surprised by how disruptive a few people can be. Imagine if that was thousands. you know? So I would say to, you know, I leaflet on the street all the time. And if everyone that I leafleted that felt powerless and like nothing could change anything actually stood up and did something, we could do incredible things, more than just throwing soup at a painting.
Brilliant stuff. Emma, really appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. And thank you so much for so lucidly putting forward your perspective.